afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your 411 show, and I'm your host, Melissa Coster. Today we're going to be talking about the serious topic of violence within sports. There's many contradicting statements and conclusions about this topic. Some say that violence is an inherited part of many games. Some say it destroys the dynamics of the game, while others say that violence in sports reflects natural tendencies among males in society. While others say that men use violence in sport to promote the idea that physical size and strength is a legitimate basis for maintaining power over others. And yet some say that violence in sport is worse today than ever before. So I think that we should take these confusions and clear the air. We can see that there is much confusion when it comes to violence within sports. So the goal of us gathering together today is to clear the air of this confusion of violence within sports and gain some clarity on the questions associated with violence in sports. And I think the best way to do this is bring in the experts themselves in different areas of sports. I have with me Judge Anderson. Next we have with us Judge Anderson.
Hi Melissa, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thanks for having me today.
No problem. We need your expertise on the violence in sports today.
Alright, I'll see what I can tell you.
So give us a practical definition of violence.
Alright, well, according to the textbook Issues and Controversies, Sports and Society, violence would be defined as the use of excessive physical force which causes or has the potential to cause harm or destruction.
Okay. What are some terms associated with violence?
Well, there's two different ones. There's the aggression as well as intimidation. So aggression is more like a verbal or a physical actions that are used to dominate, control, or harm another person. Now, some violence does occur without the aggressive intent. Now, when it comes to intimidation, it's more like the words, gestures, or actions that can threaten violence or aggression within sport. Also, just keep in mind, too, that often violence in sports are very accepted, and they're also defined as legitimate within sports.
Tell me a little bit about what the different types of violence in sport are.
For sure. So there's actually 4 different types of violence that it's classified into within sports. So one of the most regular ones that you'll see is like a common physical practices in certain sports. So like in hockey, body checking, just tackling in football, that kind of a thing. So it's not criminal or illegal, and coaches will often encourage this type of violence. So the next one that we'll talk about is the borderline violence. So this one's accepted by most players and coaches in sports, but it actually violates the rules of the sport. It's often thought of as an actual strategic method in competitive sports. So like in hockey, again, hockey fights can be used to rally up the team and get everybody going. Or things like severe elbows and knees in the game of soccer, so it can be used more as a strategic method. And then our third type of violence in sports would be the quasi-criminal violence. So this is going to actually violate the formal rules of the game, public laws, and informal norms. So a lot of the times it's actually disrespecting the rules of the game or the norms of the game found in sports. But it's not to the point of criminal where it can be prosecuted outside of the game. Oh, an example of that, again, I'll go with the hockey thing, would be like a fight after the whistle or a major hit that happens after the whistle. So it's obviously not going along with the rules of the game, but it's not actually a criminal or illegal action.
So can you tell me what would a criminal act of violence be within sport?
It's a good question. That actually leads into my 4th type of violence in sports, which is the criminal violence. So that would be clearly outside of the law. It can be prosecuted by law, and it often happens after the game. Now these types of events are relatively rare, but like one example of that would be before the Winter Olympics in 1994. Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan were rivals, major rivals. And actually Tanya's husband, now ex-husband, he, with 2 of his friends, actually attacked Nancy Kerrigan with a metal pipe and took out her knee after one of the practices at the arena, which didn't actually stop her from being able to compete. So the 2 ended up actually able to compete. Tonya Harding wasn't prosecuted with it because she stated that she didn't know anything about it. Obviously a big controversy with that. I'm not sure whether or not she actually did know about it or not, but ended up they did compete against each other, and kind of funny story is that Nancy Kerrigan ended up with a silver medal in the Olympics, where Tanya Harding ended up with a disappointing 8th place finish.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Is there any final concluding remarks that you'd like to share with our audience today?
No, I think that's it. I think we've covered the basis of the 4 types of violence and a good definition of violence. So, yeah, thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you for your time.
Hey, let's go. Oh, hey. You kidding me right now? That's my girl. Whoa. Oh, what was that, you? Oh, that's my girl. No way. That's my girl. Now. That's my girl. Get away. Oh.
No matter how many times I get punched in the face, I can always cover up the bruises.
Now we have Kelty DeWald, a historian, here to talk to us about the history of violence in sport.
It's Dr. Kelty DeWald, but I'll let that slide.
My bad. So, what can you tell us about the history of sport and how violence has been in it, both presently and in the past?
Well, in the past, with the Roman Empire, the Greek societies, there was a lot of blood sports, they were called, and there would be fights to the death, a lot of injury. It was a lot about warriors and strength and the strongest succeeding, and there was a lot of brutality in these sorts of sports. And that carried on into different societies, such as the Aztec societies, where they would sacrifice people in sports games.
That does sound really violent. How else has violence affected sports?
Well, there are other types of sports, as some people call them, spectator sports more so, things like dog fighting, bear baiting, things like that, which are extremely cruel, brutal for the animals, which have been a part of society since medieval times, and they are still in our society today, which is upsetting, of course.
So, how do you think violence in sport has changed since then?
Well, we all know that violence is still prevalent in sports because it has to be, it's a part of the game. But now sports are more about fair play and all those sorts of things. It's less focused on violence, but we all know it's still there.
Okay. So I understand you brought a video clip for us to see today?
Yes, I have a clip actually. I just dug it out of the archive. It's a video that I found from the Roman Empire. We have a battle going on between 2 warriors, so I thought that I could show it for you guys.
Very cool. Let's see that video.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, she's dead.
She goes. Are you feeling stressed?
Yeah.
Wait, let's go do some toga yoga.
Okay.
And to get a little insight on violence in the crowd, we have one of our #1 fans coming on.
Don't leave me hanging.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me, what are 3 factors related to crowd violence?
Well, number 1, the action in the crowd itself. You know, with people around you, you just get totally hyped. The crowd dynamics and the situation in which the game we watch, I mean, it could be like last place team playing first place team. We ain't gonna win. And then the historical, social, and economic and political context in which the event is planned and played.
Did you see that Toronto Maple Leafs game last night?
Whoa, don't talk about that. That's not, no.
And moving on. So tell me, which variables lead to the spectator violence?
Crowd sides, totally a main one. Composition of the crowd, age, sex, race, social class, just kind of leads up to it. And history of the relationships between the teams and among fans. Like the game last night, don't want to talk about it, it wasn't a good game. And the location of the event, like home crowd, totally has the advantage. The visiting fans, they're just losers.
Fair enough. So, are there any main specific countries where crowd violence is far above the others?
Soccer games in Europe and South America, they can get pretty crazy. Stuff that happens there mainly makes YouTube. Lots of views.
And then university football games in the United States. Those tailgate parties before the games, let me tell you, they can get pretty crazy.
So why isn't there more research on the crowd violence and like how to control it?
People, they just don't want to talk about crowd violence. I don't even know why. And then researchers don't think it's important enough to actually look into it. I mean, come on. Hockey fans, we're just crazy. But no, apparently we're not important enough.
My team lost last night.
Today I have with me Coach Dom. So Coach Dom, tell me a little bit more about the violence in the field.
So violence in sport comes in many different forms. It is grounded in social and cultural factors related in sport ethic, commercialization, gender ideology, and masculinity, and the dynamics of social class and race, and the different strategies used in sport.
Interesting. What does commercialization refer to when it comes to violence on the field?
Athletes who play power and performance sports are paid higher because of their ability to be violent. However, it is difficult to argue that commercialization and money cause athletes to act violent. Commercialization and money have expanded the opportunity to play contact sports, and the media makes these violent acts more visible to the public.
So why is it that masculinity and violence is a major part of games today?
So, men are not the only ones who perform violent acts in sport. Research based on critical and feminist theory indicate that if we want to understand violence in sport, we must understand gender ideologies and the issues of masculinity. Mike Mesner explains that many male athletes learn to define injurious acts as a part of the game rather than as violence, as long as they are within the rules of the game.
So tell me, why is masculinity and violence so important in the games today?
So, men aren't the only ones who perform violent acts in sport. Researchers based on critical and feminist theory indicate that if we want to understand violence in sport, we must understand gender ideologies first, and also the issues of masculinity. Mike Mesner explains that many male athletes learn to define injurious acts as part of the game rather than as violence, as long as they are within the rules of the game. Males also think that performing acts of violence, it will help them avoid social labels and stuff like that. But also, when women perform acts of violence, it is most likely seen as a sign of commitment or skill, but it is not seen as a proof of femininity. Dominant gender ideology in culture links manhood to violence, but there is absolutely no link between womanhood and violence. Therefore, female athletes who engage in violence do not receive the same support as men.
So how does someone control violence on the field?
So the most difficult type of violence to control is brutal body contact, because it is grounded in the culture and power and performance of the sport and the dominant gender ideologies. Efforts to control brutal body contact requires many changes within the culture, and this requires many strategies that call attention to the dangers of the actions and language that men and women use.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
So I'm sitting here with Ty Domi, and he has some interesting views on hockey fighting with us. So your game last night with Toronto Maple Leafs, there's a big brawl that got the whole bench involved. Let's take a look at that video. So now they are saying that there's a big controversy in hockey, and they're thinking about taking body checking out and taking out fighting altogether in hockey. So what is your opinion on this controversy?
If we take out fighting, what next? Do we eliminate checking? Pretty soon we'll all be out there in our dresses and skirts. Like what Don Cherry says, if you don't like fighting, go to the kitchen and make yourself a cup of tea. Whatever.
And now we have with us Marie Curie, an all-time famous scientist.
Having you here today.
So welcome. You look fabulous. How do you stay so young?
Oh, you know, science these days, you can do anything.
I hear you have taken a break from radio activity. What have you been recently researching these days?
I've been very busy with the research of violence and the violence off the field and how it is incorporated outside of sport life.
Very interesting. Tell me more about that.
We've found that people who play violent sports are already inclined to use violence in their lives and to cope with problems and to establish status in their life.
Interesting. Tell me what else you have found.
Well, off-the-field violence among athletes may be due to unique situational factors. For example, athletes with reputations as tough players may be encouraged by others to be tough on the streets. Sometimes this happens when athletes grow up in high-crime areas. Research on male hockey players in Canada suggests that those who have many years of experience in power and performance sports are more likely to approve and perform. Research on male hockey players in Canada suggests that those who have many years of experience in power and performance sports are more likely to approve and perform off-the-field violence.
Interesting. Can you provide us some examples of this kind of violence?
Highly publicized cases of assault, sexual assaults, rapes, gang rapes, and even murders are involved in athletes who play power and performance sports. They have led to my research has led to believe this is true. For example, Fast Eddie Johnson, a retired basketball player, was arrested for sexual assault. Also, Ruben Patterson of the Seattle Supersonics. He was charged with third-degree rape, not third-degree burns. Thomas Hollywood Henderson, a retired football player with the Dallas Cowboys, was charged with sexual assault as well.
Wow, these are some big, strong men in powerful sports.
Precisely. I could go on. We must understand the problem in violence in the North American culture is the forms of gender relations that exist in sports and other spheres of society if we wish to significantly cut the rates of sexual assault and rape.
Well, that sure gives us something to think about. Let's take a quick break and we'll have more with you soon. Thank you for having me.
Marie, tomato.
Finding yourself in a situation where you need a quick dental fix? No worries. Just call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
So there you have it, folks. We went on a little adventure exploring violence in sport. We learned what violence is and the major types of violence. We learned some of the history of violence within sport. And we discovered how violence is used on the field, off the field, and the spectators within the sport. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, Melissa Koster, and join us next week, same time, Tuesday at 411.